20 years of move fast, break things, let's just do this for the sake of, and let's see what happens. And now there's this like, oh wait, we've reached this edge of technology where there's some fear around what could really happen if this type of technology gets into the wrong hands.
Today, we're having a conversation with Stacy Brown-Philpot. Stacy is the former CEO of TaskRabbit and a member of the board of directors of Noom, HP, and Nordstrom. Stacy, great to see you once again.
Good to see you too.
So I think you've had probably one of the most amazing and interesting careers in our world of technology. You've done a lot, you've seen a lot. For some folks that are not familiar with you, it would be great to just give them a little bit of background, right? So you started your career in banking, am I correct?
Yes, I did.
You started at Goldman Sachs.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
Yeah. So how did your experience at Goldman Sachs prepare you for your future roles in Silicon Valley?
Yeah, I worked in the mergers and acquisitions department at Goldman Sachs before I moved out to the Bay Area to go to business school at Stanford. And I like to think that it prepared me for a couple of really important things. One is how to work. So sometimes you get that first job and somebody's to teach you like how to work. That was sort of what I learned, and how to work hard, like about work ethic and how important work ethic is. I had worked in public accounting for 2 years before I went to Goldman. And so that discipline of what's important, what's not important, how do you be efficient, how do you get things done, was really, 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 really valuable. My staffer at the time taught me something else that was really important about working. And the staffer is the person who assigns what projects you work on. And he says, Stacy, there's wheat and chaff in every job. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, there's stuff you like and there's stuff you don't like. And it's in every job. My job you always want to get promoted. You always want to do the next thing, the most senior thing, the biggest thing. He's like, every job has wheat and chaff. And he's so right. And it's even to this day, I've been like CEO of things and board of things and the highest level you could achieve of things. And there's wheat and chaff in every job. And so you learn how to appreciate both aspects of work and the kinds of things that you do. Goldman also just opened me up to the world of what does excellence look like? Like the company has a reputation to this day of being outstanding and excellent. And it was about the customer and the client and perfection and excellence around that. And so I brought that to everything that I do. And the last thing I learned at Goldman was about taking the seat at the table. Long before there was a book about the seat at the table. I had a managing director on a deal. It was a woman that I was working with. Her name is Gwen Lipstag. And I'd worked really hard on this project. And you go into the room and often there's like 2 rows of seats. There's like the big table where the important people sat, and then like the seats by the window where like the analysts who did all the work sat. And she says to me, Stacy, I want you to take a seat at the table, and whatever you do, don't get the coffee. And I was like, okay. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I want some coffee. I'm like so tired. So I sit down at the table and someone's like, can you go get the coffee? I'm like, no, I can't. Because she said, don't go get the coffee. But it was the lesson of like, this is how you take a seat. You actually sit at the big table and you're not the person who goes and gets the coffee, like you did the work. And it was like one of the best early lessons I learned as a professional, because, you know, those things weren't taught as much back then. And when you're early in your career and you like do whatever people tell you to do because you just want to do a good job. Mm-hmm. I said, no, you get a seat at the table.
You get the seat, yeah. You know, and the other thing I think that's always interesting about those environments, you tell me your thoughts on it, is that you get introduced to the world of large numbers,
Yes.
right? Like if you start your career at like a really small startup and it kind of works, it kind of doesn't, that kind of sets like maybe your mindset for the long terms in terms of like what you think you should be involved in, what you should be around. But working in a place like Goldman, right? Look at a large organization, large institutions where the numbers are just big. Like, you know, right away, like there is a world out there for you to do big things and to lead some of those big things.
Yeah. I mean, they were and arguably still are the premier bank out there, and the scale at which they operated, the deals that we worked on, you know, billions of dollars transacted. It's just the magnitude for most people is hard to even fathom.
Yeah.
And the trips that you take to meet the client and the experience around that. I grew up in Detroit, and who would have thought I'd be like on these flights to these countries and talking to these people about these multi-billion-dollar deals when I was just a little girl on the west side of Detroit.
Indeed. So what do you think was your biggest challenge in that transition from investment banking into tech?
Well, fortunately, I had the gap of business school. So I didn't go straight from work to work. I had 2 years of immersing myself in Silicon Valley and figuring out what the tech world was all about in a very supportive environment at the Stanford Graduate School of Business. And then I went to Google, and the difference between professional services and working at a company becomes very clear. Because, you know, in professional services, you work on a project for 3 months, 6 months, maybe even a year, but there's a beginning and an end to that. That deal happens, it gets transacted, and then you move on and you work on a different project. In a company, we're building a company. And so this is forever. This is, you know, we set goals, against our long-term vision, and we either hit or we don't hit those goals. And you either make or don't make it. And then you have to reset some new goals against the vision, and the vision changes, the strategy changes because the competition comes in. So then like there's still the vision, but the strategy changes, right? And so you're like in one thing. So I worked on many deals at Goldman, but this is like one thing, which was Google, right?
Yeah.
Google's also small at the time. So it was 1,000 people in the company. So it was much smaller than Goldman Sachs. We had not yet achieved that kind of scale. So it was a lot of scrappiness and a lot of things that weren't solved and weren't figured out and didn't need to be figured out yet because we were just trying to figure out how to build the business. So it's very different environment. And then it was just the stark difference between an early stage tech company and Goldman Sachs, financial Wall Street, traditional company, right? With the free lunches at Google. And at the time, you know, it was very casual. People wore jeans and t-shirts and things like that to work. And this was the time when that wasn't the case in a lot of other professions.
That's true. And then, all right, so then after that, you leave and you end up becoming the CEO of TaskRabbit, another environmental change for you. So talk to us about TaskRabbit, that journey, and, you know, the challenges that were around that business at that time.
Yeah, so Google grew to 50,000 people in the time that I was there. So talk about scale and living the scale. You know, the company had, I don't know, 100 million or so in revenue when I started, and then billions in revenue when I left. So just riding that, and I don't know any company that has achieved that kind of scale at that pace, that 9-year period that I was there. And so I grew up as an executive, learning about strategy, setting vision, operations, building teams, different functions, marketing, operations, sales, finance, and lived in India. So I did a international assignment and ran our Google team in India. So really expanded.
How long were you in India?
Horizons. I was there for a whole year.
That's great.
Yeah, it was wonderful. And so to see this kind of scale and the transformation that Google made, I sort of reached a point where I'd had this amazing journey at this amazing company, and I was ready to think about the next journey. What's the next thing that I'm going to do? And TaskRabbit came up. I met the founder with my youngest daughter. My oldest daughter was 5 weeks old, and we sort of hit it off. I tried the service. I really liked her, and she was thinking about bringing on a COO. And the company had about $1 million in revenue at the time, and it was small. It was 60 people, $1 million in revenue. We were operating in 8 cities, and she wanted me to come in as the COO. So here I was going to go from this big 50,000 person company all the way back down to, small startup. We had one office in San Francisco, and everybody was there, and that was it. And so it was a big transition in a couple of ways. One, you sort of get comfortable with the comforts of a big company, of the resources, how easy it is to hire. To go to a small company is really difficult to hire because everybody wants to work at Google. Like, why don't they work at your startup when they could go work at Google or Amazon or Apple or Facebook? Why would they want to come to TaskRabbit? So it's hard to recruit people. We didn't have the capital with all those resources. We weren't a profitable company yet. We raised venture capital. We were trying to use all the money to invest in engineering, invest in our growth. The other thing that was different was I was coming in as a C-level executive. So I wasn't like a junior person. I joined Google as a senior financial analyst, and I was coming into TaskRabbit as a chief operating officer. So I was a senior person in the company. And after Leah, the most senior person, second most senior person in the company. So what I did mattered. And I remember people sort of worried about, she's going to come in, she's going to fire a bunch of people and make a bunch of changes because she's like this big C-level for everything I said was amplified. And you don't realize that the first time you get that kind of position, how big your voice is if you have very little to say. And I remember joining and everyone's freaking out about what Stacy's going to do. And I just said, all right, I am going to make some changes and you'll know in 90 days what those are. And everyone was like, they breathed a sigh of relief. Because one was sigh of relief was just, when are we going to know? And then what are the changes? And so I learned telling people when they're going to know something is so powerful because they just that anxiety, that tension sort of goes away. And so I made a bunch of changes, but at least they knew 90 days from now, we're going to know what those things are. And she's going to make some we have to worry about, is she going to actually do anything? And so the voice is a C-level, the responsibility of that voice is so big, so important.
Yeah. And human beings, we do this thing where we fill in those unknown spaces with a lot of the worst case scenario, right?
Right.
It's hard for people to stay positive and just be patient in that process. So that happens sometimes, but yeah, so that's interesting. So with you, then ultimately you ended up selling to IKEA in 2017?
Yes, that's right.
So how did you come to that point and conclude that it was time to sell?
Yeah, I had become the CEO of TaskRabbit in 2016 after Leah agreed to move on, and she was chair of the board at the time. And we were growing. We were now operating in the US and in the UK. We were on a trajectory to launch more countries and expand in more cities in the US. And we had this opportunity for a partnership to come up. And we'd already executed a partnership with Amazon. So we were looking for other ways to grow inorganically, outside of just traditional convincing users and doing traditional SEM and SEO marketing to get people to know about TaskRabbit and use TaskRabbit. And so there was a meeting in December of 2015 with IKEA. They'd flown to Silicon Valley and wanted to meet some interesting startups. We were lucky enough to get on that list. And in the meeting, they were really excited to just hear how many people were using TaskRabbit to put together their furniture. And it was like mind blowing to them, like the number of people, but more importantly, the amount of money they were spending. Because IKEA is not an expensive furniture. I mean, they pride themselves on being affordable and high, like low cost, high quality. And so people were spending as much as the item to like pay somebody else to put it together in some places like San Francisco. And so that was mind blowing. So that started the conversation of a partnership of, wow, there's a whole segment of customers that we're not serving well because we've not thought about these types of services that they need. And the new CEO, Jesper, had just come in and he was really trying to expand the thinking of the organization. And so we executed a partnership with them, and it was a disaster at first, actually, because we launched it in London and we were so excited. We were so ready, Donovan. We were like, yes. And it turns out that the number one thing people wanted to buy was these Pax wardrobes from IKEA, which are, you know, big dressers effectively. Mm-hmm. And a lot of apartments in London don't have closets. So this is your closet. This thing is like big enough to be like the thing you put all your clothes and shoes and so on in.
Right.
We knew that. We knew that was going to be a top seller. We knew that. What we didn't plan for was that we needed 2 people to put together the wardrobe because the ceiling heights in a lot of apartments are very low. So it's hard to build something laying flat and stand it up because it'll hit the ceiling. So you actually have to finish it standing up, which means you need 2 people. And our platform only allowed for you to hire 1 person at a time. And so we launched, there's all these people, they're buying the Pax wardrobe. It's super successful. Like, wait, we need 2 people. We don't have the technology to do that. So we had all these tasks like queued up, and we were scrambling, and our operations team did a fantastic job of like getting on the phone and calling taskers and say, can you show up at this address? And, you know, all of that. And then in 2 weeks, we were able to like build the technology to allow the hiring of 2 people for a task where it was required, more than 1 person was required. And so, of course, I was like freaking out that this was not going to go well with the management at IKEA. But what they saw was, and this gets to the reason for the acquisition, what they saw was that, wow, like there's more demand for an item that we never anticipated. This is a highly profitable activity for us because it's a service, which is better margins than building and manufacturing and selling things. And this is a new customer. People are adding more to their cart. Like they're spending more money with us. And so they saw the overall value. And so when you think about selling, we thought about, okay, this is a company that sees the long-term value of a partnership and a relationship. And we started to talk about M&A conversations. It became very easy to say yes.
What are the most important qualities for a successful leader in today's business world based on all of the combination of your experience?
A lot has happened in the last 5 years, where a leader, it used to be, well, as long as I could execute and I could hire great people and I could surround myself with talented people who were smarter than me, than what I was able to do. And we had a big vision, and I could inspire people to get excited about that vision and to provide some of the time in their life to helping us all work together to execute that vision. Like that's what leaders do. And they act as servant leaders who can get out there and roll up their sleeves and figure stuff out. I mean, I used to do tasks on TaskRabbit myself just to like be in the experience. I think there's another layer now of the social element of leadership and really understanding who people are, appreciating that mental health is a challenge for a lot of people in our world today, creating work environments that allow people to have the space, the psychological safety to succeed, reacting to the broader macroeconomic, whether political or social environment. That takes another layer of leadership for anybody who's in a leadership position to have to handle, in addition to hitting our OKRs, our objectives and key results, and our targets and our goals. It's a lot.
And now you've moved on and you have a new venture.
I do, yes. Should I tell you about it?
I would love to hear about it. Please tell us more.
Thank you. I am the co-founder and managing partner of Cherryrock Capital. We are an early stage venture firm where we focus on investing at the Series A, Series B stage in Black and Latino entrepreneurs who are building software companies in the US. And I went from 20 years of operating to starting this firm because I see a big gap in the market, which is access to capital for Black and Latino entrepreneurs at the Series A stage. There's been a number of firms created to focus at the C stage to get you that first, $2-3 million. And we can by no means declare victory that there are enough of them. But as those companies have matured over the last 5 years, you can count on one hand the number of firms that are focused on this population, that have significant capital to write larger checks and lead investment rounds in those companies. And it's the case that companies that achieve unicorn status, Black and Latino founders achieve unicorn status 11 times the average of a venture-backed company. So when you receive that first $1 million in revenue and you get the capital that you need to scale your business, we are going to outperform. And so I noticed this was happening, but the lack of capital being there. And so that's why Cherryrock Capital exists. That's what we do.
Amazing. So you also have Sheryl Sandberg as one of your advisors.
I do.
Right. So what was that like, bringing her on board, and how does she help you? How does she help you achieve success in this mission?
Well, I've known Sheryl for over 20 years at this point. We met when I was at Google. I interviewed with her on my interview.
Wow.
Yes. So, and she was Sheryl from DC and now in Silicon Valley, and I was the senior financial analyst candidate. Very different people than we are today. And so she's been a friend and a mentor of mine for a very long time. And when I started to come up with the idea for Cherryrock and started reaching out to my friends about what I was doing, she was the first person to say yes to investing in my fund.
That's great.
And I said, she's like, I don't know if you're going to be able to do it. Apparently this market is hard, but she was still at Facebook at the time and she wasn't in venture, but everyone tells you that it's really hard, but she's like, I believe in you. And I wanted her as an advisor because I wanted people around me that I trusted, who know me, who could hold me accountable to doing the thing I said I was going to do and be a resource for me and a support for me when stuff got tough. And she's also an amazing leader and operator. I learned so much from her during my time at Google that the advice and counsel she can provide to our founders is enormous. And most of them won't have access to someone like her or someone like her, but for, her decision to be an advisor to our fund.
So in addition to this new fund, you also sit on the boards of a few companies. You want to walk us through which ones?
Yeah, I'm on 2 public company boards, HP and Nordstrom,
right?
And then 3 private company boards, StockX, Noom, and Joy. And I've been on HP the longest. It was my first board. And I joined that board in 2015. And I'd like to think I've seen most things in all of my board history, from the highs and lows of growing a business in a challenging environment. Sitting on the boards of those companies during COVID was fascinating. Running my own company during COVID and just watching the different experiences that transpired. Being on the Nordstrom board when George Floyd was murdered and how people were moving stores and a variety of things and like underappreciating the safety around that. And then of course, COVID and how that has really hurt a lot of industries, helped a lot of industries, hurt a lot of industries in a lot of ways. It's been a fascinating, wonderful experience.
Yeah, I could imagine. It's a lot to take in, again, at that senior executive level, large numbers, seat at the table, right? Comes back to that again. So how do these roles provide you with the insights or when working with startups and early stage founders? Because I know they're two different things, but they're similar at the same time. So those similarities. So what are the insights that kind of cross paths on this?
Well, one of the biggest insights is, and the reason why we're focused at Series A and B is a lot of what's important about the company at that time is we've got a product, it's in market, we've got a couple $1 million of revenue. So the company is growing. We've got some customers willing to pay for this service, but we really need to figure out how to scale. And so I've executed the playbook of scale at TaskRabbit, but I get to see how those decisions get made at the $10 billion level, the $50 billion level when interacting with a Nordstrom and an HP. And so what it helps me do is a couple of things. One is, as a startup thinks about go-to-market, how they're going to sell, we're going to sell to enterprises, and here's our strategy. We got these salespeople. I actually know what that looks like on the other side. How do you actually sell to HP or Nordstrom? Like, not only do I have the relationships, but what matters to them? And a lot of founders get focused on their product, the thing that they really want to build for the world. Everyone's going to love it. And then you got to go figure out, A, like, do the people that you want to sell it to, do they love it? And B, like, can they build it faster than you? Because guess what? All those big companies have money, more money than you. So if they see something that's exciting, they could just go build it themselves. So it really helps us assess, like, is an opportunity a real good opportunity where they're not going to get eaten up by the competition? Do we understand what the customer value proposition is for this company's product? It helps us think about that from an investment perspective. And then just as a board member, I've been a board member for a long time. So a lot of founders, the first time you have a board member is at your Series A, and you're nervous about what that's going to be like. Well, I happen to have experience. I have like a decade of experience serving on the board of my own company and others, so I can bring the expertise around how to be an effective board member to the companies that we invest in.
Thanks for that. And it's interesting. It's always interesting to see the experiences, and the similarities and the differences in the backgrounds, right? Especially when it comes to what you've been able to see around product, right? Like you were saying, like, founders need to be able to build something that someone else is going to want to buy. If you don't do that, you just have a really nice, really expensive, really laborious habit. Right now, the topic that everyone's talking about, it's on the minds of everyone at Davos, everyone here, every headline in the newspaper, every day, we can't escape it. Artificial intelligence.
Yes.
Right. So as someone who's navigated both the traditional and tech-driven businesses, how do you see AI bridging the gap between established companies and innovative startups?
Innovation has always fueled growth and change, and it's forced everybody to relook at everything differently. And I bring up Nordstrom because when I joined the board, we were still investing in mobile and getting app ready and, really trying to figure out how to make it a good, seamless experience. The page took a long time to load. Let's get the load time down on the app. And there was this assumption that, wow, like, no one's ever going to go to the store again. Because once you can buy things online, like, people aren't going to want to shop. They're never going to want to go to the store. It turns out that's not true. But it did create a better experience. It created a better experience in the store, and it created a better experience on the app. So when I think about AI and a lot of this sort of excitement and fear, like, all that's real, but what what I know for sure will happen is that it's going to create a better experience for everybody, because it's going to force established companies to relook at the way that they run their businesses and the level of efficiency and productivity that they're able to achieve, and to rethink how to get better, how to create a better experience for their customers. I don't think all the jobs are going to go away. Just like the mall still exists for some reason. I went to one the day after the day after Thanksgiving. It was packed, 45 minutes to park.
Really?
So,
Oh, wow. Okay.
yes. So people still go to malls. They go to the stores in them. But what AI has done and will do is really force us to really rethink like human behavior and what is the role of human behavior in our society.
What are some of the biggest challenges and opportunities in integrating AI into these larger kind of like slow moving organizations?
Yeah. A lot of companies have lots of tech debt. So when you think about the capital expenditure of a very big, large, traditional company, most of their technology budget is on something called R&M, or run and maintain. It's often 60%, 65%. That's just maintaining the systems that we have today. And then maybe it's 35% on new things and things that we're working on. And so with that kind of load, it's very hard to integrate new technology, build new technology, and create new technology. And it's also the case that these companies operate at significant scale in highly regulated environments in a lot of ways, especially if they're a public company. That's a highly regulated environment. You have a fiduciary responsibility in ways that you don't have as a private company. And because of that, security, how data is accessed, managed, reviewed, controlled, like all these things matter. And so you can't just show up with this new feature that now we're going to do all our coding using something in AI, and now it's going to be so much faster for everybody without putting the protections around it because of these fiduciary responsibilities. And so that's another challenge that when I talk to big companies about what's important to them and how is AI important to them, why is it important to them, that matters a lot. There are opportunities in getting more efficient, being more productive, creating a better customer experience. Like those are the three things that I hear consistently. Like despite these challenges, we know that these are the three things. We want to be more efficient, we want to be more productive, and we want to create a better experience for our customers. And so because of that, we can navigate the challenges. But I think we're underestimating a lot of the security challenges associated with AI today with a lot of big companies and the fiduciary and regulatory responsibilities that they have.
The biggest advancements in technology and tech innovation over the last 20 years, where would you rank artificial intelligence?
That's tough because I've been around for a little longer than some people. And I would say when the internet was created, we thought, okay, we're going to lay the pipe, we'll have the fiber, we'll get this platform out there. It's going to change everybody's life. Now we can search for stuff, we can look at things. And then what happened was companies like TaskRabbit showed up, which is now you're not just using the internet to get information, you're actually enabling services to exist that couldn't exist before the internet existed. So it's and so I compare that to now where there are things that you can do with artificial intelligence that you could not do before.
Yeah.
It's pretty high up there with the creation of the internet. Like I think they're like neck and neck for me, but we don't have a look back yet on how much progress we'll make on all the things that we used to not be able to do that we can do now. But the magnitude is significant with artificial intelligence.
In previous years, we've seen unbridled building of technology for the sake of shareholder return. Do you think that with something as powerful as artificial intelligence, that it should be different this time around? So in other words, do you think that AI has a responsibility to society?
Absolutely. Any leader has responsibility. And, dare I say, like oil and gas companies, right? But they also have a responsibility. We figured out the cigarette companies, they had a responsibility. So it's not, people talk about technology and the responsibility of technology and like, what's our responsibility? It's like the only industry that has responsibilities as we innovate, as we develop, as we grow to sort of take care of society. And when we don't, or when they don't do it, we should be held accountable 100%. And so you're right, like 20 years of move fast, break things. Let's just do this for the sake of, and let's see what happens. And now there's this like, oh, wait, we've reached this edge of technology where there's some fear around what could really happen if this type of technology gets into the wrong hands. But the ethics of AI is, what does that really mean? Like, if we are at the edge of something, what is our responsibility? And I'm glad that there are people who are thinking about that responsibility. I'm on the board of the Urban Institute, and we had a great discussion about that. You were just talking about Davos. Like, there are a lot of people who are putting in boundaries and guardrails and bringing these topics up, not to stop innovation or stifle, but to just challenge us to be better and for us to deliver something for society that's good for everybody.
So from your boardroom seat, what specific AI application or trends do you see having the most significant impact on the future of corporations?
Yeah, it's a fun topic in the boardroom now, because it was like cybersecurity and geopolitical stuff that all felt really scary.
Yeah.
Now it's like, oh, it's all these features, these things that we can do. I will say that every board that I'm on is thinking about, how do we use AI to generate more revenue for this business and grow our company? And what changes do we need to make inside the company to make that happen? And that's a consistent thing, because the generation of people who are using this technology is native to it. Mm-hmm. And so if you are a direct-to-consumer business, or any way your business touches consumers like you and me, and all of my boards do, that's like the only thing on our mind. It's like, what's the mind share of the next generation of customer, and how do we build our company for that?
So from a governance perspective, when you look at it as a board member, what are the ethical considerations and potential risks surrounding AI that you believe boards should be focused on the most?
This is where the security question comes up, because you could imagine, I'm on the board of HP. Right. I have a laptop.
Right.
What should my laptop be able to do with and without my permission? How does HP design laptops for the future with AI, but also make sure that there's a secure way for me to conduct my business? What if my company doesn't want me to have all of these options, but HP is designing laptops that gives you a menu of choices? Mm-hmm. How do I design the laptop to make sure that the menu of choices are available to everybody,
right?
But it can be cornered off for some people who don't want it, right? And so the assumption that we want to go there because that's where everybody else is going is where we're all excited about, but there's the ethics of what does the customer really want, and what is our role as a board in defining the product roadmap and what that looks like. Mm-hmm. And so the strategy discussions are interesting because we get to see what's new, what's coming, but there's also a governance part, like you said, which is like, okay, wait a minute. What happens if something goes wrong here? have we signed off on a strategy where we knew we were going to do something that was going to negatively impact somebody? And so what's our responsibility there? And those are the questions. Those are the questions that we don't have the answers to, but the important thing is that we're talking about them.
And so given your background and your new venture into venture capital, what criteria are you using to evaluate AI-powered startups when considering potential investments?
One of our sectors that we focus on with Cherryrock Capital is enterprise infrastructure. Another one is digital health. We also like fintech, future of work, and the intersection of business to consumer. So when we think about AI across all of those different dimensions, we're not looking for features that can be things that you or I like to use that's really fun, because you're never going to pay for it. And we're in the business of generating a return. And so we've got to invest in companies that are going to generate a return based on not just the technology, but the value created from that technology. So one of our criteria is when we look at a company, we want to see revenue already. So you've already figured out you've got at least $1 million of ARR. And that's a signal for us. Mm-hmm. A second thing that we're looking for is a really hard technical problem that you're solving. And not on the infrastructure side for AI, because that's figured out. It's expensive and it's figured out. But what's the technical problem on top of the platforms that are there that you're solving? Number one, how flexible is your technology to the evolution of the platforms that are being created? And the reason why is because, as you and I know, in the last 12 months, the world of generative AI has evolved so much and we're not done yet. And so we can't invest without thinking about the dynamic flexibility of it. Mm-hmm. And then the last piece is something we've discussed, which is, are you generating something that's either going to create more efficiency, increase productivity, or create a better customer experience? Because if it's not any one of those things, it's hard to see it become a big business. It could become a technology that gets absorbed into another platform. That's fine, but that's not what we're betting on when we raise money. We're betting on long-term, sustainable billion-dollar businesses, and that they have to have customer value.
How do you see AI being used to address various societal challenges, such as healthcare disparities or economic inequality?
I think this is one of the most exciting times in our lives and the biggest opportunity we have to address those areas. One of the things that on the healthcare side is we now have, I know of an AI startup that is creating specific treatments for autoimmune diseases and a process for early detection using artificial intelligence. And so, there's a way to talk about like how do we fix heart disease and diabetes and some of the broader kind of chronic things that a lot of communities face. But the fact that we can get down to those details is phenomenal. Like, could you imagine a world where early detection of disease just saves 50% more lives?
Right.
And that's exciting. And being able to distribute that technology to communities that wouldn't otherwise have access to them is also very exciting. So I think that as much as we're afraid of what AI is going to do and whether we're going to lose our jobs or not, I don't think we will. There's this big opportunity to sort of really advance medicine and care, and in particular things around early detection. On the income inequality side, wouldn't it be fantastic to never have to worry about, can I get a loan? Do I qualify? Is this person making a decision based on my race? Ever again, right? And there are companies that are working on solving that problem right now and actually working with the various government agencies to understand where those systemic rules were or are that are preventing people from migrating from one place to another, achieving higher levels of wealth in the most common way that in America we generate wealth with this home, which is home ownership. Like, there are companies that are working on that right now. I think there's so much opportunity, and I hope they get funded and find the partnerships that they need to be successful.
What excites you the most about the future of AI?
What excites me the most about the future of AI is all the fun we're going to have with all the new things that'll be created that we know nothing about.
Thank you so much for your time. This has been great. It's always good to have a conversation with you. And so I'm really excited that we'll be able to get this out to our audience very, very soon.
Very good.